what would happen if we stopped believing that we were the controller of our life? What would happen if we stopped putting so much pressure on ourselves to get it right and instead started believing that we could trust into something bigger, that we could surrender our hands up and say, I trust that what's meant for me won't pass me? What would change in my life if I gave that trust up to the higher plan? If we can believe there's a higher plan, doesn't that relieve so much weight that we put on ourselves on a daily basis? We put so much weight on ourselves, feeling like we are the only one puppeteering our life, creating change. And there's constantly this interweb of other people bringing in change into our life based on the way that they're changing their life, right? The ripple effect is so real, and we maybe never had control in the first place. We have control over our actions, our ways of responding to our emotions, our behaviors, but at the end of the day, do we have control over the rest? Do we have control over where our life is going in the grander way? We have control over the here and now. And many of us have probably realized and recognized that life is going to throw us curveballs that we cannot avoid. And we can try avoiding them like the plague, right? We can really try to protect ourselves, and me too, right? Of trying to protect ourselves from the old things that we've experienced that we don't want to experience again. And so we put all these walls and boxes around ourselves, trying to protect ourselves from the story happening again. But then as a result, the story happens again because we're putting so much pressure on the fear that it could. And how exhausting is that, right? How exhausting is it to constantly feel like we have to be on alert, to be hyper vigilant, to life not repeating itself, when at the end of the day, if we experience something again and again and again and again, it's allowing us to see ourselves through another fractal of who we are, another side, another version. It allows us and invites us forward to experience ourselves in a new way, in a more full way. And so what would it be like if you took off the pressure that you had to do it all on your own, and instead recognized, asked yourself, got to know this version of yourself that could be a bit more free-flowing, that could trust in the greater plan, that could take the weight off of your own shoulders and say, maybe, just maybe, everything is working out for me. Everything is working out for me. And there's a part of this that our external lives can change much more beautifully, let's say, if we get out of our own way. And I've experienced this a lot in my life, trying to live 10 steps ahead. And as I'm hooked 10 steps ahead saying, I want to get here, I'm blocking all of the beauty that could go in the place that I have identified I want to go. And I'm like hooked energetically in all of these future-oriented things, which goals are beautiful. I'm not saying goals should be thrown out the window. But when we are so hyper fixated and attached to what we want our life to be, what we think it should be, what if we're getting in the way of all the beauty that's trying to come into our experience? What if we could have visions, have goals of what we want it to feel like instead of what we want it to look like, right? Because if we want it to feel a certain way, that can look a myriad of different ways. And so what would be required of me to trust more? To trust more in the plan? What would be required of me to release more control? For me, it would require, to release more control, I have to get out of my head and I have to get into my body. I can live here, right? I can live here in the story, in the protective mechanism of understanding why, in the conceptualizing, in the rigidity, in the pressure I put on myself. Beautiful cardinal outside. That just always feels like a beautiful gift. And if I am asking myself to release control, I'm creating more space. I'm creating more space. I'm trusting myself. I'm working on building practices that deepen my self-trust, that deepen my ability to stay even in the discomfort. It's an ability to take a pause and operate from this heart space, from the intuition, from the trust, versus from the attachment, the gripping, the fear of letting something go, the fear of doing something wrong, the fear of saying something wrong. What if there wasn't a way to do it wrong if we're connected here? If we're anchored in our truth, if we're anchored in our voice, if we're anchored in our heart, if we're anchored in the higher plan, and if we feel like we can be this like open vessel instead of being a vessel stuck with all this sludge of our past. And again, I say that with a grain of salt because it's really hard as a human being to just like rid all of this past. It's built in our body because our bodies store, and everything in our lives, I believe, are mirrors to start opening space for what has been stored to move. And when I can look at it that way, I can take the like frustration off of myself for feeling past things and say, okay, like this is an opportunity for this story to change. This is an opportunity for me to show up differently. And how can I still honor and trust my heart? And so in this week, what would it be like for you to, instead of plan 10 steps ahead, say, I want to feel what? I want to feel more peace. I want to feel that the people around me are, I want to feel the people around me. I want to feel the people around me, like deeply connected to the people around me, right? I want to feel the community. I want to feel the connection to nature. I want to feel my life. I want to feel my abundance. I want to feel my support, that I'm like infinitely supported. I want to feel my power. I want to feel my truth. I want to feel my creative energy. I want to feel anchored. I want to feel centered. I want to feel the ability to slow down. The ability to slow down, the ability to be here, the ability to be in the present, right? And so oftentimes I can find myself wanting to control the people around me, the environments that I put myself in, and that's not my job, right? My job is to see that the environments and the people I'm around are teachers, and I have an ability to make choices about how I'm showing up. And so if I can trust in the greater plan, I am deeply aware then. If you choose to trust in the greater plan, you're deeply aware that everything's a teacher and that you don't have to figure it all out, but you have to play in the teaching. You have to be a student. You have to be willing to be a beginner. You have to be willing to feel the feelings. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable. You have to be willing. You have to be willing. We have to be willing to not know. And yet, at the same time, we have to be willing to know. It's always a dichotomy, right? It's always both ends of the spectrum. It's always both polarities at the same time, to know and to not know, to be a student, to be a teacher, to be attached and passionate, but also detached, to be trusting and surrendered, to be driven, and to be able to like find ease, okay? And so 9 minutes in, happy last week of May, and I hope this week and this month of a theme around spiritual connection has really dropped you in these videos to reminding yourself that you don't have to have it all together, that you don't have to do it all on your own, that there is something in a plan, a guidance system that when we can tap into, it allows us to feel so much more supported. And we in our world live in a world that can feel really isolated. And so may we come together and remember that we are interconnected and we get to be interdependent versus codependent versus isolated. So big love to all of you and have a beautiful, beautiful week.